Hi, I'm Rosella Bianco and I'm going to present a research we have conducted, Monica Ortiz and I, on the informal language learning of refugees during their migration experience. This research is part of a bigger research project on refugees' relation with languages and Italian language learning. Before to enter the details of the study, we would like to contextualize the work in order to better understand the need for deeper studies in this field. First of all, it is impossible not to mention the actual migration context in which we find Italy and most of the European countries. In this era, very often we hear about migration crisis. That is because of the vast amount of people that in the last decades have fled their countries in order to escape from wars and dictatorships. Between the main countries of origin of the refugees, there are countries like Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, South Sudan, Somalia, Eritrea, Nigeria, Mali, Gambia, Congo, and many others. The growth of the migrants' presence of the last years has gradually induced in almost all European countries the implementation of migration policies. At the center of these policies, there is the knowledge of the language of the residency country. According to each European country, the language is a requirement either for the admission into the country, the permanence in the country, or for the citizenship application. And each European country requires the language competence for one or more of these reasons, and each country also requires a different competence level of the language. Well, regarding Italy, the requirement is the mastery of Italian language at a A2 level of the Common European Framework in order to obtain the long-term permit of stay. These policies have been criticized in the literature by authors like Coticta, for example, who describes this policy as the policy of the mandatory integration. And well, we have to say that the implementation of such a policy can have at least two potential effects. First of all, more prohibitive procedure to obtain the legal status of the immigrants, limiting so the residency of the immigrant in the European countries. And on the other hand, if the attention focuses exclusively on the country of residency language learning, this can intensify the monolingual attitude of countries where the linguistic diversity and the presence of immigrant languages are perceived as a threat to the national unity. This monolingual approach also reflects in the attention of the literature towards the dominant language, the language that must be learned. As a consequence, the studies on the immigrant languages and multilingualism are scarce in the literature, and also scarce are the studies on refugees' linguistic repertoires and their attitude toward languages. That's because refugees are seen mainly only as a migration problem. On the other hand, it is important to emphasize that if Europe values plurilingual skills as precious, from another point of view, refugees' migration experience, which also led to plurilingual abilities, is definitely not valued in the same way. So, for all these reasons, we have decided to focus on the refugees' language learning and their repertoires. We have made an ethnography, conducting 28 in-depth interviews to adult refugees in Italy, focusing on their linguistic biographies. The refugees we have interviewed have various nationalities, where they come mainly from Nigeria, Pakistan, and many countries from Western Africa like Gambia, Senegal, but also Asia like Bangladesh, and countries of course like Syria, Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea, Egypt, and some others. So let's come to the results. The data we have collected in this study show that refugees and asylum seekers live a peculiar migration experience as forced migrants. This migration experience consists of generally long migration period that can last even up to several years. Other kinds of migrants don't live the same migration experience because, for example, economic migrants have a migration process which is a voluntary process and is generally consists of a safe and comfortable trip. Coming to the refugees, during the migration period, refugees usually cross various countries and stay in one or more of them for a long period. So, for this reason, they have the opportunity to enter in contact with the local population and learn their language. As a result, this experience ends up with the enlargement of their linguistic repertoire. As we can see by the fragment of interview shown in this slide, learning the local language covers an instrumental need and helps the migrant to work in the new country. In this interview, we can see that this asylum seeker complains about Greeks not speaking English and him being forced to learn their language. But once he learned some Greek, this language has allowed him to work during his stay in Greece. As we already said, refugees' migration experience can be long and can consist of various countries crossing. As a result, the refugee learns the languages of those countries he crosses and collects various levels of competence for each language based on his experience in the country he passes by. For example, he can get some basic and sometimes partial competences in a language and more advanced ones of another language. Also, as the European host country is often a temporary country of stay, the refugees plan to move to another country and to learn its language, as it happened with this asylum seeker who lives in Italy and plans to go live in Holland. During his migration experience, he has acquired some basic skills of Arabic, of Italian, and will probably learn Dutch in the future. So, summarizing the results of this work, we need first to say that as forced migrants enter in contact with various languages and cultures, they end up with at least partial and basic competences of those languages. The more the migration experience is long and comprises many countries, the more the migrant can extend his language repertoire to other languages. The refugee knowledge is in fact shaped by the migration experience, which can result with a linguistic and cultural enrichment. The linguistic knowledge acquired during the migration experience definitely improves the linguistic competences of the refugees, who usually hold a rich multilingual repertoire. Concluding, it would be important to value the language competences of the refugees, taking them into account in the outline of integration policies that promote multilingualism in the European countries. Thank you very much for the attention. Here we leave you a short bibliography selection. We welcome any further inquiry about curiosity or doubts about this work, and you can contact us at this email you can see in this slide. Thank you again.